Hey, this is Brandon Crawford from the San Francisco Giants, and you're listening to Torture Cast.
You're listening to a podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants.
Let's go Giants!
With hosts Willie Dills, Chad King, Ben Lee, and Eric Nathanson. Dedicated to the greatest team in Major League Baseball, the San Francisco Giants. This is Torture Cast.
Standing on time, not gonna stop. We came to play, ain't slowing down. Falling on, we're here to stay, and we're stomping on whatever's in our way. I'm feeling like a giant tonight.
It's Monday, June 3rd, 2019, and this is episode 168 of the Torchcast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. I'm your host, Chad King, and joining me today on this lovely afternoon, at least it's lovely here. How's it in Georgia, Eric?
It is just as lovely in Georgia, and with the Giants coming off 2 wins, so we have some positive stuff to talk about. Unlike last week, it makes it even better. I mean, last week we were talking about getting swept at the hands of the D-backs, and at least this week we have a 3-3 week, and the Giants looked like a real baseball team again.
Yeah, they actually played some okay baseball this week. The unfortunate thing, though, and we noted this coming in, is they were playing some of the worst teams in Major League Baseball, and to be honest, after the way it started, going 3-3 is great now because they won the last 2 in Baltimore, and 3 of their last 4 overall. But yeah, it was rough, and we'll get to it in the weekend review. But to perform the way they did against Miami and one of the games in Baltimore, it's just, again, bad signs for this pitching staff, the way this team gets behind early, and their inability to overcome large deficits. So it is what it is, but we'll get to that. But yeah, like you said, 3-3 since last Monday. They're 24-34 overall, still 10 games under 500. But of course, the big number, and you were just going 16 games the pre-show. They are 16 games back of the Dodgers in last place. It's bad, and then still 5 games back of Arizona for 4th. So they are definitely cellar dwellers right now. There's no putting lipstick on this pig, ladies and gentlemen. They are performing very, very poorly. But one of the big things that we were shocked about over the last week, we talked about this last podcast, is the amount of runs they were outscored by, especially against the Diamondbacks. That was just an atrocious series where they just got slaughtered by 28, 30-something runs, whatever it was. So now they sit, even though they were +2 for the week, they still sit at a -76, which is the worst run differential in all of the National League, still 2 behind the Marlins. So this isn't good. So, I mean, it's like one of those expected win-loss things. It's like, no, they should be this bad. They've been outscored by 76 runs, and it's June. So, yeah, that's not good.
They surpassed the Marlins on that. The Marlins, at the start of last week, had the worst run differential, but thanks to the Giants playing the Marlins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking like it was kind of a toilet bowl kind of thing between them and the Marlins and the Orioles. It was like who's gonna fail the most? And yeah, the Giants didn't do so well against the cellar dwellers of the National League East. And the one thing that was really weird, this I was picked up on Twitter and I looked into it, but the Diamondbacks crushed the Giants a week and a half ago when we were talking about that last podcast. Well, what's crazy about it is that the Diamondbacks came into that series, they had lost 3 in a row before that. And they crushed the Giants, sweep them, and they've lost 5 since, or they lost 5 after. What the hell? I don't. I mean, that's just weird baseball, man. Baseball is just freaking weird.
Like the familiarity of it. You know what's even weirder is Arizona was 11-17 in the month of May. So they were 6 games under 500 in the month of May, but they still outscored their opponents 5.2 runs a game to 4.5. Thanks to that 3-game series. Yes, they had like a positive 19 run differential for the month of May, even though they went 11-17 during the month.
Oh my God, that's just worth. I mean, yeah, if they got crushed by the Dodgers or the Braves,
right?
Or, one of these superior teams, you'd be like, well, but Arizona's not a great team this year. They're obviously in 4th place in the National League West, and they come in and just wipe the floor with the Giants, and they lose to everyone else, apparently. We're the punching bag for anyone, really, including the Marlins. So let's talk about that. The week in the review. On Tuesday, they went into Miami, and you and I were salivating, but with caution, because this is a bad team. Both of them are bad teams. And we're just thinking, okay, I know it's a road game, so the Marlins have a little bit of an advantage, but let's see what the Giants can do. Maybe they can go 4-2 in Baltimore and Miami. And we were hoping for 5-1, obviously, on the outside chance. 3-3 isn't much worse than that, but the way it started, again, 3-3 is a thankful record right now. But they did lose 11-3 on Tuesday. Shark, who's been on and off, he's kind of falling into that familiar pattern that we all know him by. He is all or nothing Shark. I mean, he'll go from one game, 3-hit shutout, or maybe giving up one solo jack, and then the next game he just gives up 4 home runs and 6 earned runs over 5 or something like that. It's just, he is Jekyll and Hyde, and so he was definitely not the good form of the Shark. He gave up 5 earned runs in 4 innings, and in fact the Giants used 4 pitchers, and all 4 pitchers gave up at least 1 earned run, and for that game they each gave up an ERA of 9+, meaning they gave up at least a run per inning or more that they pitched. So yeah, not a good performance really by anyone. There aren't too many highlights to talk about on that one.
But there is. It started out well. Joe Panic hit the first pitch of the series for a home run, and we're like, all right, here comes the Giants' offense. And it didn't. I mean, they even had a lead after 1 inning, 1-0. They kept the lead. But like
Miami didn't score in the first.
Yep. It was like, this is a new Giants team. And then, like you said, Shark, 8 hits in 4 innings. And then Vincent gave up a 3-run bomb to, the Aflalo guy. And the game was over at that point. And Holland and Coonrod cleaned it up. And Miami's not bad. They are 11-5 over their last 16. And they did just take 2 of 3 in San Diego over the weekend. Yeah. So they've been playing better baseball. So I like to think that these 3 games in Miami were a little tougher than they seem because of the Marlins record.
Yeah, that particular game, the Giants only mustered 6 hits. The aforementioned Panic went 2 for 4. Crawford also went 2 for 4. And then Vogt and Belt had single hits in that game. So really not too much to talk about there. And the Giants were getting waxed 11-1. They ended up putting up 2 in the 9th. Not really making the score any better, but, hey, this team, and we talked about the run differential and the runs by inning, the Giants seem to do very well with scoring late in games. They have a pretty high run per inning total in the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. But they just can't do anything in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. And, of course, they give up all these runs in those that first frame especially, and we'll get to more of that because, the Giants continue to do so. So Panic hit the only home run in the game for the Giants. They went into the next day thinking, okay, well, maybe the Giants can still take 2 out of 3. That was just a bad loss. Just scrub out the bad taste out of your mouth. Move on. No, although Madison Bumgarner pitched pretty well. He gave up 2 earned runs in 6 innings pitched. But, again, all 3 pitchers who pitched gave up at least 1 earned run. And a familiar face, Sergio Romo, came in and got a shaky save, but a save nonetheless. Yeah. And so that was a little weird to see him out on the mound and do his little, pump action at the end and point to the sky. And, but, hey, the Giants didn't re-sign him. He floated to, the Dodgers and the Rays and now the Marlins. So he's been all over the board since then. His stats aren't very good, but he's apparently still hanging around in the major leagues. But I know that one of the things he did was he hung out in the Giants clubhouse quite a bit. And I was reading an article about it because I was like, man, you never hear about that happening. Maybe they'll come over and just say hi real quick to the manager or something like that. But apparently he spent up to 45 minutes one day just hanging out and chatting with his former teammates. And then, of course, he presented Bruce Bochy with a gift. And so that pretty classy of Romo. I mean, you really do get a sense that he's a really good guy. The times that I've spoken with him and interviewed him, he's a genuine individual. He's a genuine human being. And so I definitely pull for the guy as long as he's not wearing a Dodger uniform. So I was very happy to see him perform so poorly in Dodger blue, so much as they released him a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he got banished to the Florida teams, and it was funny too. They showed Javi is doing the color on this trip, and they showed Javi Lopez standing there talking to Sergio, and they talked for like 20 minutes, and you can see them shake each other's hands and hug at the end, and it's like that was half of the core 4. Those were the championship years right there.
Yeah, he's the only active pitcher out of the core 4 still, so it's just kind of like hanging on to that little bit of Giants memories. I don't know. It's nostalgia. It's fun to think about, and then we move on to Thursday, and of course they start out this road trip 0-2 against the lowly Marlins, which you're thinking, oh my God, are they actually going to get swept in Miami? I was just like, oh my God, this is we're definitely going to hit the bottom of the barrel here for the Giants season, but Tyler Beede came in and saved the day. He went 6 innings and only gave up 1 earned run. Of course, he didn't get the win. Moranta did, but it was a satisfying 3-1 victory.
Yeah, I like you. I'm like, oh no, here comes the sweep. Beede hasn't shown us anything, and he attacked the strike zone more. 60 of his 94 pitches were for strikes. He did get 9 swings and misses, and generally kept the ball on the ground. He got 11 ground ball outs, which is pretty impressive. So Beede, it was the best start he's had as a Giant. It was good to see. And then they put together a nice little rally towards the end of the game. Granted, it got Moranta the win, but like the Giants, Crawford was in the middle of both of them. He doubled to lead off the 7th and then was driven in by Little Yaz. And then he doubled in the 8th to drive in 2 when the bases were loaded. And it could have been 3 if the ball didn't bounce out of the ballpark. And the Giants didn't end up scoring anymore. So it was pretty much Crawford and Beede. And it was good to see. It was good to see a young pitcher step up. And it was good to see a guy like Crawford have his day, because he's got some good memories in Miami with the 7-hit game and all that. So he must see the ball there. Yeah, he must see the ball there really, really well, because he had a good series and a good week overall.
Yeah, and Will Smith came in and got his 13th save of the year, which is pretty incredible considering that was the Giants' 22nd victory of the year. So he saved 13 out of their 22 victories at that point. So not too bad, but at least they salvaged the series. And then, of course, heading into Baltimore, we're thinking, all right, I mean, they got to take 2 out of 3 from Baltimore. They have to. I mean, this is the road trip. They got to get healthy. They, got out of Oracle after that horrible Diamondback series and everything else that happened. And what do? They score 5 runs in the first, Eric. We're sitting there going, all right.
Yeah.
Even if the Orioles score 1 or 2, we're definitely going to have a lead after the first inning. They're finally going to be the team that no. That was almost comical. It really was. I wasn't watching the game at the time. I just saw my MLB at Bat app was just flaring up. I was just like, 5 runs. Yes, all right. And then it was 5-1, and it was 5-3, and then it was 5. What the hell happened?
Oh, it was so brutal to watch. Like that 5-run, I watched the first inning because the Cubs game hadn't started yet for me to switch that to the big screen and distract me. But I watched the first inning, and it was great. Panic walked, Yastrzemski tripled, Posey singled. Crawford ended up driving one in with a sac fly. Duggar singled to drive in 2 runs. It was an all-around great inning from the order, and then Drew Pomeranz decided to come in, and after getting a ground out, he walked a guy, and then he just gave up a single where they then kicked the ball around a little bit, another single where Duggar kicked the ball around a little bit, and then Dwight Smith Jr. hits a grand slam off of Pomeranz. And all that fun goodness, finally we're going to have a first inning for the Giants, all went to crap on one swing of the bat by Dwight Smith Jr. And it blows my mind that it's Dwight Smith Jr. because I remember when his dad was a rookie. So, and Drew Pomeranz, that was literally the only good thing to come from that game was Mike Yastrzemski tied it with his first Major League home run off of Andrew Kashner right away in the top of the 2nd. But then Pomeranz gave up a home run to Trey Mancini, and they ended up losing the game 9-6. Pomeranz, they said they're skipping a start. Not that he's available out of the bullpen. Not that he's being demoted. He's available out of the bullpen. But because they have so many off days coming up, they're going to juggle the rotation. So he's not out of the rotation. He's just not going to have a turn anytime soon. And rightfully so. I mean, his ERA has got to be 1 million by now.
It is 8.08 on the year. And this is a guy who won 17 games with the Padres just a few years ago. And yeah, his ERA wasn't great with Boston. His career has been nowhere close to how poorly he's doing right now. I mean, the Giants picked up this guy, and I was like, hey, this might be a diamond in the rough. He might, if he can, summon some of those Padre outings, maybe he'll be serviceable, and maybe he can win 8 to 10 games for the Giants this year. Oh my God. I mean, I don't think anyone could have seen this coming. His control, he struggled so much. We've talked about it. He picks and nibbles, and the curveball keeps missing, and and the guys just wait. They just sit and wait, and then they crush anything that he leaks over the middle, and it shows. 8.08 ERA that particular game. He gave up, let's see his box score here, 1 1/3. He gave up 8 earned runs, 6 hits, 2 walks, 2 home runs, struck out 2. I mean, yeah, he might have been able. Maybe Bochy should have pulled him a little earlier, but at the same time, he's like, look, he gave up 6 in the first. How bad could it be in the second? We need some innings out of our starters, right? We can't keep taxing the bullpen. And sure enough, he gave up that home run in the bottom of the second right after Mini Yaz tied it up in the top of the second. And what's crazy is that it was 8-6 after 2 innings of play. And I was listening to the radio at the time. I was driving around, and John Miller is like, well, it's top of the third here at Camden Yards, and who knows what the heck's going to happen in this game. Because, they had seen so much offense and a couple of errors here and there. So, but it quieted down after that. After the last 7 innings, there was 1 run. That's it. Baltimore scored 1 in the bottom of the 7th. That was it. So very weird
game. Yeah.
Yeah. I did expect that game was going to be kind of a 15-12 kind of thing, but yeah, the Giants just couldn't score after that, and Baltimore only scored 1 after that. So at least the bullpen came in and shut things down. But
well, you noted it here. Derek Rodriguez with a strong return. He had 4 2/3 innings. He only let up 2 hits. He struck out 2, he walked 2, but he didn't give up any runs, which is the key. And he actually threw 81 pitches to Palm's 56. So he worked a lot harder.
He did. He worked a lot harder. And his ERA, is down to 4.34. So he's getting it down. I know he just came back up from AAA, but if he can kind of harness this and kind of settle down and get his ERA in kind of the low 4s, high 3s, I'll be very, very happy. I think most Giants fans will be happy. I don't think anyone pretended that he was going to repeat what he did last year because he was a rook and hitters figure it's a cycle, right? It's very cyclical. When there's a book written on a guy, then the hitters can study that more and understand his tendencies and pitch selection and certain at-bats and counts. And then it goes back and forth. So it's kind of a game of chess. And so far at the beginning of this season, he's losing, but hopefully he got a little more seasoning, a little bit more coaching, and maybe he's figuring things out in his one outing here. He can continue that forward. The problem was, here they are facing the 2 of the worst teams in the major leagues, and they've lost 3 out of 4 now. And you're just thinking, my God, it doesn't matter who they play. I mean, they might play the Sacramento River Cats and lose 3 out of 4. I mean, it's that bad. This team is that bad. And it was getting pretty dire. But in Game 2, things picked up a little bit for the Giants, and they had one of those very rare, comfortable wins. They won 8-2, and Shaun Anderson, the rookie, gets his first win of the year in his career. He gave up 2 earned runs in 7. Belt was 2 for 4 with a double and 4 RBI, so he was the offense for the game.
It was like an actual overall win. They had a starting pitcher go deep. It was 7 innings for Anderson. It was the first time they had anybody pitch 7 innings since, I just looked at it, April 13th, when Bumgarner went 7 innings. April 13th, so it's like 40 games. And Shaun Anderson, it was great. That's the thing to come out of this weekend is we finally saw kids step up. Like D-Rod counts in that. Shaun Anderson absolutely counts in that. And then Coonrod closed the game out. So, I mean, it was all about Shaun Anderson dominating a quote-unquote major league lineup. And the fact that he did it in an AL park, only 5 hits. He only struck out 4 batters, but he was good with his spots and had weak contact all day long. Mm-hmm. And it was the kind of win that, you expect to see out of the Giants when they're playing a bad team. And finally, Baltimore looked like the bad team because, like you said, Belt drove in 4. He was like teeing off all day.
No, it's good to see Belt. I know there's a lot of Belt haters out there, but he had a really good day. And he only had 3 at-bats, so he did kind of the most of what he could do in that limited amount of time. David Hess was the not bad luck loser. He was just the loser for the Orioles, and he's having a very bad year. So this is definitely the kind of game the Giants need to beat up on one of these guys. He's now 1-7 on the year with a 7.36 ERA. So not quite Drew Pomeranz territory, but he's getting there. So he's definitely the kind of guy that they needed to beat up on, and they did. So it was good for them. And now you're thinking, all right, let's move on. Oh, by the way, do I have highlights for that game? I thought I did. I guess I don't. Oh, yeah, I have Buster Posey going deep. We forgot to talk about him. Here's his solo jack.
Buster drives it to right. A little something behind it.
We're going to talk about it. It's a homer. When it hits the fence, it's a homer. Over the scoreboard should be a home run.
There you go. Everyone's calling for it. Buster's still not moving though.
They call it there. You're going to play it again.
Out of here!
I love Kipe. He is so funny, man. It is.
I was twirling my finger. You could tell that it hit over there. The Giants played enough parks like that. The right fielder tried to play it off. He threw the ball in, tried to act like he hit the wall, so he totally threw Kipe off there.
Oh, that was fantastic. Yeah, so Posey again, he's lost his power. Hopefully we see some of it coming back. He's on pace to hit more than 5, which is what he hit last year, so that's great. And he's hitting a lot of them opposite field. That one was an opposite field, which is barely got to the fence, but he was part of that offense along with Brandon Belt. So we're moving into Sunday thinking, all right, they can take 2 out of 3 and kind of salvage this 3-3 kind of road trip so far and maybe win 3 out of the last 4. And they had another very similar game. They won 8-1, another very comfortable win. Brandon Crawford did very well, 2 solo jacks, Longo with a home run and a double. And in fact, he had been 0 for on the road trip. So the first 5 games of the trip, he had not had a single hit. So it was nice to see him kind of bust out of that slump. And the Shark, who was, again, Jekyll last time, now he's Hyde this time, he pitched well. He gave up a run in the first. So that was, again, another thing that keeps haunting the Giants. But he settled down and pitched very well.
Yeah, that Trey Mancini guy got him. That Trey Mancini's not bad. He's a decent player for the Orioles there. The other thing that the Giants did is not only did they give up a run in the first and fall behind, but they scored in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. They scored in 5 consecutive innings. Mm-hmm. And off the top of my head, going back, I could not find another game where they've scored in 5 consecutive innings this year. So it was good to see them just, continue to pile on and pile on. It helped that Crawford, had his 2 solo shots, and Longo when he broke out of it. And Longo, like you said, broke out in a big way, which you hope for when he's playing in a ballpark. I'm tired of it. I hate to say it, but I'm tired of it taking so long for Longoria to break out of things and feel comfortable in places. Like, the man's played a half a season in Baltimore over his career. He should feel comfortable there, and it took him till Sunday to finally come through.
Yeah, so we had Evan Longoria stepping to the plate, and this was a 1-0 game, actually. Baltimore was still leading in the top of the 4th, and he came up with the first pitch of the at-bat and 1 out.
Longoria, high drive to left. It is out of here. And this game is tied, and it's the first hit for Longoria. Here in...
Well, that's the crazy thing about it, is that when you see him connect like this and you see these highlights, it just looks so natural. You're like, why isn't this guy hitting more jacks? It's not like it was an effortless swing. It cleared, way up into the bleachers. And it's like, why isn't this happening more often?
Yeah, that was his best swing of the year. It just seems so easy and natural when he does it. Seemed that way again when he hit the ground rule double in the 5th inning. When he swings through the ball, when he's seeing it well. The homer, something I've always advocated with Longo is he sometimes sees his best pitch on the first pitch. And that was what my favorite thing about this homer was. It was the first pitch of the at-bat. So he just jumped on the pitcher the second time through, and it was good to see him finally attack that first pitch and do something with it instead of just fouling it back or watching it go down the middle.
Yeah, it was effortless. And then, just like all the Giants who have been struggling this year, Crawford in particular, at least he's showing a little bit more power lately, even though his batting average is really, really down. But again, he had a multi-homer game, and this was the first home run that he hit in the game after the Giants had a 4-1 lead with 2 outs in the top of the 6th.
And the pitch. Crawford hits a high drive to left. Broxton on the move, at the wall, out of here. Crawford with his 4th of the year, and it's 5-1.
And that was a tailing fastball. It did catch the middle of the plate, but he barreled it up and hit it the opposite field. And then he comes up in the top of the 8th, again with nobody out, an 0-1 count. The Giants now up 6-1, and he does it again.
Crawford drives one to right center field. It is out of here. He's done it again. He's got 2 today. Are you going to say you got your foot down again?
Great call, Dwayne.
Oh, my goodness.
So it was nice to see him jack 2 out, kind of help the cause. Very happy to see that.
Yeah, you could hear somebody audibly go, "Ooh," when he hit that second one, like he hurt the baseball. When he has his stroke, that's the kind of thing that he does, is he hammers the ball. And then Tony Watson, in the bottom of the 8th, he struck out the side like it was nothing. And the bullpen all weekend was pretty intact. And Will Smith came in, even though it wasn't a save situation, and ended up getting 4 outs, actually, because of a drop third strike in the 9th inning. And the Giants looked like a good ball club, and heading to New York with a 3-3 on this road trip. Like you said, after starting the road trip 1-3, it's surprising to say the least, and it's good to see them playing good baseball. I said they might start hitting the ball away from home, and that's exactly what they started doing again. Just had to get out of Miami.
Yeah, so the Giants racked up 11 hits that game, and 8 of the 9 starters had at least 1 hit. The only starter to not have a hit was Pablo Sandoval, who DH'd that game. He went 0 for 4. But, ironically, he has the highest batting average on the team so far amongst the semi-regular to regulars. I'm just going to go down this list in order of the batting order yesterday. Joe Panik, 239. He was 1 for 5. Yaz, of course, few at-bats, right? He's still hitting 276 along with Pablo, but he was 1 for 4. Longo went 3 for 5 with those 3 RBI. He's hitting 220. Sandoval 0 for 4, hitting 276. There's that high watermark. Brandon Belt 1 for 3, 243. Kevin Pillar 1 for 5, 219. Crawford 2 for 5, 214. Stephen Vogt 1 for 2, 255. And then Steven Duggar 1 for 4 at 242. So it's rough to see these batting averages, but I look over on the the right side of the box score here, and the Orioles aren't that much different, although Mancini is hitting 302. But beyond him, everybody else is like 250 or less. So these are 2 struggling teams, and it shows in their offense. But at least the Giants were able to rack up those 11 hits and 8 runs, and then kind of get to that 3-3 mark as they head into New York.
It shows the Giants, they're batting 235 on the road. They're 14-16 on the road. They're not bad on the road. They're competitive, and they're batting 235. And they've only been outscored 150 to 138. So that's 12 runs overall. It's 5 to 4.6 a game. At home, though, they're 10-18 and only hitting 209. So 235 on the road and 209 at home. 209 at home. And they've also allowed 150 runs at home, which is 5.4 a game. But, forget that part. They're averaging 3.1 runs a game at home and 4.6 on the road. So they're a run and a half better on the road. Right. They've only hit 18 home runs at home, and they've hit 18, here it is. And on the road, they're in the middle of the pack. They have 37 home runs in 30 home road games. So they do hit better on the road. And the Mets pitching isn't the best, so they have a chance this week to actually make it a winning road trip. The Giants could come home with a 16-17 road record, or who knows? Because something's got to give. Because May was one of the worst months in the history of the San Francisco Giants.
So let's talk about that. We're going to do a stat check, and I'm going to talk about the overall stats, and then you're going to fill them in on how bad May actually was. So right now, the Giants, pitching has always been their strength, and even at the beginning of this year, they were, again, floating at 3rd or 4th in the NL in most of the pitching stats. It's absolutely tanked since then, and particularly because of the month of May. They are now 12th in the National League in ERA at 4.65. That really hurts, and it's mostly the starters. The bullpen's been okay. That definitely is dominated by the starters. They're last in the NL in hitting at 222. That's still 9 points behind the Padres at 231. They're also last in on-base percentage and even fielding percentage. A fielding percentage. The Giants last in fielding percentage in the National League. That doesn't make sense to me. They got a bunch of Gold Glovers on this team, and they just haven't. We talked about last week how they gave up 15 unearned runs in that week. And they'd given up 32 now total before this podcast all year. So they gave up half of their unearned runs in 1 week. So the defense has been very shaky as of late. They're second to the last in the National League in home runs at 55. And then, of course, slugging at 371 and OPS, which is all linked together at 661. But it was really fueled, the pitching anyway, by May. And let's talk about May, because traditionally the Giants have always had that June swoon, and I don't think it can get much worse than what May was.
I'm still blown away that they won 10 games. They went 10-16 in the month of May, and with some of these numbers, I don't know how the F that happened. Like the starting pitchers in May had a 7.32 ERA. It was the worst ERA in baseball for the month of May. It was the worst ERA in any month ever in the history of the franchise in San Francisco.
That blows me away. That's insane.
And the worst ERA in a month in baseball since the A's had an 8.25 ERA in September 2015. So 7.32 ERA by just the starters, not the whole pitching staff, just the starters.
Right.
They had a third. Go ahead.
I just, when you think about it, there's about 6 months of the baseball season, right?
Yeah.
The Giants moved here in 58. So we're talking about 61 years, of Giants baseball in San Francisco. And you multiply that by 6. So roughly 360 months of Giants baseball. And we just witnessed their worst month ever. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, not record-wise, obviously, but statistically for pitching.
And they've had some bad teams. Like every time I go looking up stats right now, mid-80s keep popping up, and they've had some bad starters, but nothing like the run that they had during this month of May. It's like they were snake bit the entire, no pun intended because of the Diamondback series, but they really were. The starters could not get out of their own way. They had a 315 batting average against, again, the worst in major leagues. They only struck out in, 26 starts. They only struck out 99 batters. So each starting pitcher averaged, 4 strikeouts a start.
Wow.
And then the third fewest innings pitched for a starting pitcher in the majors during May, which comes with a caveat because the Rays actually had the fewest, but they used an opener. So it was really the second fewest. Giant starters only won 2 games in the month of May. It was literally the worst pitching performance we've ever seen from the starters. The relievers were not bad. They on their own, they had a 4.34 ERA, which was middle of the pack, 226 batting average against, which was the 5th best, and they had 123 strikeouts. So the bullpen struck out more guys than the starters did during the month of May.
That's insane.
It is. They had more innings pitched. No, they had 2 fewer innings pitched. They had 116 innings pitched to the 118 of the starters for the Giants. So overall, their pitching during May, they had a 5.85 ERA, which was the 4th worst in baseball behind Pittsburgh, Seattle, and Colorado. They allowed 175 runs, but 155 of those were earned. So 20 unearned runs in the month of May, which speaks to the fielding you were talking about. It was the 3rd most runs in the month. And, look at that, 152. So it's 33 unearned runs during that. And their 273 batting average against was the 7th worst in baseball. During May, they allowed 6.7 runs per game and scored 4.3. So the Giants were outscored on a per-game basis by 2.5 runs every single game in the month of May.
Most of that in the first. Well, no, it just feels like it, but...
It does. And then even when they start June by scoring in the first, I mean, the offense wasn't much better. They had the 3rd worst batting average in all of baseball in the month of May, behind Toronto and Detroit. Toronto's been struggling. They scored less than the Giants. Yeah. They had the 5th fewest runs scored this month. They had the 2nd fewest hits behind Toronto, 3rd fewest homers behind Miami, of course, and Kansas City. And they had the worst OPS of any National League club in the month of May, 685.
Wow. Amazing. All right, well, let's talk about the merry-go-round and the revolving door that is transactions for the San Francisco Giants under Farhan Saeed.
It's probably why they have these stats, because they don't have a set team.
Exactly. So over the last week, we're just going to kind of go in chronological order here. Excuse me. May 29th, they placed Nick Vincent on the 10-day injured list with a right pec strain. The same day they recalled Williams. Is it Jerez or Jerez? It's Jerez, isn't it?
It's Jerez. Yeah, it's Jerez.
I've heard one person, and so I kind of gave me some doubt. They recalled him from Sacramento, and then the next day optioned him back down after his one appearance there. And then on May 30th, they recalled Tyler Beede, of course, who had that great start, ending that little bit of a losing streak for the Giants. Because they did have a 7-game losing streak, by the way. June 2nd, they recalled Aramis Garcia. They optioned Sam Coonrod, your favorite, back to Sacramento. And then on June 1st, Mac Williamson, who was DFA'd by the Giants, finally elects free agency. I think we both predicted that was going to happen. He has to have a change of scenery. He's got to get out of the Giants farm system. And I haven't heard of anything in the last day or two. Has he signed with anyone, or is he still floating around? I assume he's still floating around.
Yeah, I think he's still floating around, which is,
To be expected.
he may float around for a little bit and just sign on with somebody. Everybody's paying attention to the draft right now, so there might not be a spot for him. But I was sorry to see Coonrod. He was pitching decently. I mean, he gave up a homer in one of his appearances, but like his last time out against Baltimore, Coonrod finished a game that Anderson started. So, when you look to the future, that kind of stuff might be happening. I thought Coonrod looked good in his brief appearance. I thought he looked almost like a Hunter Strickland, but better.
Yeah, I think he definitely has a future with the Giants. He has plenty of options, so they're just doing what they can. Again, this revolving door of Giants players. I don't even know what the roster's up to, like 38 or 39. It's been on the 25-man now. It's pretty insane. All right, let's talk about who's hot, who's not. Brandon Belt, 7 for 20, and this is stats over the last week. 7 for 20 with a home run and 6 RBI. Crawford, 7 for 22 with 2 home runs and 6 RBI, of course, mostly in that last game in Baltimore. And Posey, a modest 4 for 13. This is the stretch, folks. This is what we have to look for.
4 for 13.
Woo, he's hot. It's like,
well,
so many players are batting that for the year. And I'm like, yay, 4 for 13. Let's put him in the who's hot column. He obviously had a home run this week as well.
I started looking it up, and this is stats I think we'll look into down the road, but I started looking up like how the Giants do in wins and losses, and Belt and Duggar are hitting over 300 in wins, and both are hitting like 115 in losses. And then there's Posey. He's like 260 and 260. Like, it doesn't matter.
I was going to say, I would have totally predicted he was Mr. Consistency.
He is. It doesn't matter if they're winning or lose. That's how they win or lose. It's not Posey that's going to win or lose. It's the guys around him. He's just going to keep doing what he does.
Yeah. All right, and then the vaunted list of who's not. Pablo is 3 for his last 19, but we'll talk about him here in a minute. Longo, 3 for 17, those 3 hits in that last game, in which he had 4 RBI, so he had an 0 for 17 prior to that. Panic, 5 for 25, and then, of course, the aforementioned Drew Pomerantz, 8 earned runs, in an inning and a third. His ERA is up to 8.08 for the year. And then Derek Holland, he's coming out of the bullpen in relief, but his ERA is still sitting at 6.75 because he's still getting hit fairly hard out of the pen.
Yeah. Leave him there.
Yeah, I mean, it's Derek Holland. Yeah, leave him there. Exactly. He was not so good last year, but he was good last year. And it's really unfortunate to see so many players, and that's, they've been talking about it on KMBR so much. These players have all come in and they have career averages in all of these stats, right? And yeah, you're going to have certain players perform under their averages. But to have every single player perform under their average is just astounding to me. And they're not all 38 years old. They're not all at the tail end of their, longevity in baseball. So you can't explain it away just purely by age. I don't know what's going on, but to see this many, virtually the entire team underperform is quite disappointing.
It's penance for 2010 when everybody overperformed.
Yeah. They squeezed every win and every playoff win and victory and, triple, double and bunts down the third base line and balls that bounced off the top of the center field wall and stayed in. You're right. They just seem to have sold their soul to the devil to win those 3 championships. And I think this is penance. It is a swing in the natural dynamics of baseball. It's hit or miss, and sometimes it rains, sometimes there's a drought, and that's what's happening right now with the Giants. It's definitely a drought.
When you look at somebody like Pomerantz, we do have to put that one on Farhan. That didn't really work out so well for him, and I wouldn't be shocked if Palm and Holland are just not part of the ball club later this year. I don't know if they'll be released or what. And, that's a couple of decent contracts that they're going to have to eat just so they can get some young kids in there. Because if they're going to get the same production from young kids, this front office is going to want to see the kids down the road. Pretty soon, moves are going to start happening, and there's not going to be room for everybody. Or they might get to hang on because they'll trade the good guys from the bullpen.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, so every Major League Baseball team has to have at least one representative in the All-Star game. And what's so funny is that so many people have complained about that over the years, going like, why, every team has maybe one player, but some years there are several teams that probably shouldn't even be represented. because there are other players that should have representation, and they get snubbed because some schmuck from the Marlins gets to go. The Giants haven't been in that situation in a long time, but they do find themselves in that weird situation where they probably don't really, really deserve a legitimate All-Star this year. Certainly you can make the case for Will Smith because you have to have at least one Giant in the All-Star game. And so that's kind of been the de facto choice, I'd say, that most people agree with. But you're positing, and other people have as well, and I can go along with this, that what about Pablo?
I mean, why not? He totally could be elected however they're doing it. They're doing primaries and then elections. And, if you need a utility guy that's fun to have around, because other than Will Smith, none of the pitchers are worthy of it. But it's funny because you put Will Smith and that might rob Pablo of the chance because Will Smith has been pretty much dominant. Like I never feel worried when he comes in. I mean, the guy's got a .7 whip. He just kind of mows down the hitters at this point. 13, like you said, 13 saves and 24 victories, which is kind of ridiculous. So, I mean, I would like to see Pablo. I guess my heart says Pablo, but I think you're right. I think it's going to be Will Smith, and that's going to be it. I think Bochy, though, will get added to the coaching staff. Who is it? Dodgers again. Bochy will get added to the coaching staff, being his last season, I bet. And you have to wonder if he can somehow finagle his guy, Pablo, onto the roster.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't even think about Bochy being added, but of course Dave Roberts is the manager this year, so
Right.
It would be a little odd for a Dodger manager to select Bochy, but it would be a classy move by Roberts if he were to do so. I mean, Dave Roberts did play for the Giants too, so let's not forget that. But yeah, I could see some lobbying going on, but at the same time, I do think that Will Smith is probably going to be the one of the Giants traded before the trade deadline. Now, someone did bring up the possibility that even though the deadline is the 31st, it wouldn't be a total shock if Zaidi jumped on a good trade offer, should one come, prior to the All-Star game. Now, that would be an interesting situation.
I hope so. I want trading season to start now. I'm freaking ready.
That would open it up for Pablo, no doubt, right? Because he wouldn't
absolutely.
Will Smith wouldn't be the Giants' representative, and they would have to have someone from the Giants. But that would just be really interesting because, number one, it would probably rob Will Smith of an All-Star appearance, and number two, it would probably give Pablo the nod, which is like, who saw that coming? That's really weird.
Yeah, right. Nobody saw that coming. I love it. Pablo's the only... Pablo is us. You know what I mean? He's us in that locker room. He's us in that dugout. He's just the fan that wants to be a Giant that's trying to have a good time. And that's all we're doing with Giants baseball is trying to have a good time.
No doubt.
All right, so we...
Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, I got it. The Major League Draft is today. I believe it's just the first round tonight. And the Giants have the 10th pick in the draft, which surprised me when I looked it up. I recall the Giants sucking last year, so I thought maybe they'd have like the 4th or the 5th pick again. But apparently they're the 10th pick, and so far Farhan said he'll go best available. So we don't know what that really means. We haven't done much scouting, but there will be some new Giants on the roster over the next 3 days that get drafted. Somebody's name will leak tonight. And since it's a day off for the Giants fans will be online and on social media and watching MLB Network just to see who the Giants draft, even though we've probably never heard of them.
Yeah, most likely. And, there's a lot of famous 10th round picks. I don't have a whole list here. For the Giants in particular, of course, in 2006, they took Tim Lincecum in the 10th round, and the very next year in 2007, they took Madison Bumgarner. So the Giants definitely have a recent history of doing very well in the 10th round. Overall, you can talk about Mark McGwire. He was drafted in the 10th round. 10th round as in the 10th pick for the A's, so he did fairly well there. And there's been a list of recent 10th rounders that have done pretty well across Major League Baseball. So when you have a top 10 pick, that is a place where you cannot have a bust, or at least you hope to not have a bust. And, Zaidi has been known to take flyers, like, for example, with I think it was the 2015 draft with the Dodgers. They were picking 26th or 28th or whatever. He took Walker Buehler, who was already slated for Tommy John surgery. But they said, hey, we can take the time to rehab this guy and get him back on the mound because this is what we see in him. And sure enough, it paid off. Look at how he's doing.
Yeah, it was a good move. Yeah.
It was a good move. But in an interview with, I forget who it was, maybe it was with one of the Giants' local beat writers, but he was talking about that particular move, and he's like, yeah, we took a chance with Buehler, and it seemed to pay off, but we can't do that with the 10th pick. The 10th pick is no time for experimentation and, surmising what a guy might do and be the surprise pick, be creative or whatever. He's like, we'll just have to go with pretty much the best available player like you had just mentioned. So most of the draft boards do point towards them picking a position player as opposed to a pitcher, but we'll see what happens. Zaidi may have something up his sleeve. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're going to pick top 10 this year, and they're going to pick top 10 next year, too. So Farhan's got a couple drafts to build, and I'm curious to see if they stick with – they've been taking a lot of college players in the first round lately, and I'm curious to see if he goes with a college player or if he decides to dip into the high school ranks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know the Giants have traditionally stayed away from high school players, but we'll see what he has to muster. All right, so this week in Giants history, which you have been continuing throughout the year, you have something from 2006.
Yeah, we all remember Jason Schmidt. He was a good Giant. When we see the hashtag Forever Giant going around, Jason Schmidt falls in line with that.
For sure.
And in 2006 against the Marlins, he struck out 16. It was the most ever for a Giants pitcher. It tied a Christy Mathewson game from October 3rd, 1904, according to the Giants media guide. And I put that in there because there's no box score of the Christy Mathewson 1904 game. So Jason Schmidt holds the strikeout record for one game, and since this is a year and an era of strikeouts, I figured I'd revisit the biggest strikeout performance because June as a month itself, next week's will be Perfect Kane. That one's like easy, and this is just one of those months where pitching performances dominate. So I want to at least give a nod to a guy who was pre-championship years. So I'm going to write about June 6, 2006, when Jason Schmidt struck out 16 Marlins through 124 pitches, I think, that day. And it was the most ever strikeouts for a Giants pitcher in a single game through a complete game. Not a shutout. I think he let up 2 or 3 runs, but we'll find out. I'm going to revisit it this week.
Yeah, Jason Schmidt is one of those guys when I was a little bit younger. I really did think that he was going to take them with, Barry Bonds to the promised land. It just never worked out for him. And then after he left the Giants, he left the Giants at the right time. He just never did anything after that. So it was good to see the Giants got most out of him than any other team could have hoped for.
I remember one memory of him shutting the Cubs down at Wrigley where he threw like a one-hitter, and I was there. I think it was a one-hitter. It might not have been. It might have been 2 or 3. Who knows? I was probably in my teens, but or early 20s at that point. But that was my one Jason Schmidt memory. Like, he'll always be burned as a Giant in my mind, for that reason. Like, I've seen him more than I've seen some of the current guys,
Oh, my gosh. I know. I tended to watch a lot more when I had more free time, Eric. I'm just saying. When you get a full-time job and you have kids and you have a lot of driving to do, it's hard. A lot of it's radio and the at-bat app. So, in fact, I haven't even covered a game yet this year. I hope to get there, however, in the next couple of weeks. They do have a long homestand coming up. And, in fact, after these 3 against the Mets, they are back home for 3 against the Dodgers starting Friday. And then after that, they have a couple of off days within the week. And I think they mix it up with the Padres and the Brewers. So I think the Giants, if they are beaten up a little bit in New York and then maybe even against LA, they're going to have some time to recuperate. So that'll be good to see. But hopefully they won't need to. Hopefully it'll just be nice off days for the players to go, spend time with their family and have some nice dinners at restaurants and, tool around the city because, I always hate hearing about, oh, well, thank God the Giants have 2 off days this week because they need it. Their bullpen is taxed. I don't want to hear that.
No. And hopefully this Mets series won't be too bad. I look forward to the Mets series. I think that the Giants will match up well against them, and I think they'll continue hitting the ball. I wouldn't be shocked to see another 18 to 20 runs scored by the Giants over the next 3 games.
Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll be back next Monday, but you can follow us collectively at TortureCast on Twitter. Like us on Facebook as well. Just look us up there. You can also check out our YouTube channel. All of our podcasts post there, as well as Stitcher and iTunes and Podbean and Podomatic, and I don't know. You just find it wherever you get your podcast from. You can follow us individually at 2 Out Hits. That's with the number 2 for Eric. Myself at ChadK21. And, of course, always check out our website at torchcast.com. That is where we post our podcast. Not only that, but Eric has been fantastic this year in posting so many of these articles, particularly the This Week in Giants History that have the last one really blew up, which has been absolutely fantastic. So we really do appreciate your patronage and reading it. Eric's an excellent writer, and I really enjoy the quality work he puts out there.
I got nothing else but this week.
You got nothing else.
History.
You got more This Week in Giants History. All right. All right, man. Well, it was another good podcast, and you follow us, guys. That's all we're asking. Just follow us. We're not paid for this stuff. We don't make any money. We're paying to actually keep this site up and running. So whatever support you can throw out through your viewership and readership, really, we do appreciate it. Just go ahead and pimp us on social media as much as you can. And we'll be there starting the conversation. So for Eric, this is Chad signing off for episode 168, and we'll see you next week for episode 169. Until then, a-boom.
A big thank you to everybody for listening to the Torture Cast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. Follow us on Twitter at TortureCast. You can also like us on Facebook or check out our blog at torturecast.com. I also want to say thank you to Ashcon and Bailey for letting us use their song Feeling Like a Giant for our intro. For Ben Lee and Chad King, my name is Willie Dills saying, we'll see you next time.